guys, so basically I'm going to set the car up so I can switch back and forth between the stock ECU and the MegaSquirt, so I have time to learn how to tune and use the car. So for the intake air temp sensor, I'm going to use this top spot and drill a hole here and just screw this in there. So then I can just leave this in there and swap back from the map sensor to air and fuel and not have an issue without having to make any extra pieces. Alright guys, so I got this sensor in. Had a little issue with it, so I had to use electrical tape on it. Next thing that I'm getting ready to set up is to mount the map sensor so I can keep it in. Pretty much going to put it right about here. That should be good. Now the map sensor and intake air temp sensor is installed. Alright guys, so I'm getting ready to install a wideband. Just took off this little cover that comes over here and another one that's down here. Moving this piece so I can get more access to all the electrical wires so I can wire everything up. Okay, now that I got that piece removed, I can see completely underneath here. Still gonna see where I have space to route the wires from the A pillar down here. It's probably gonna be through this hole right here where I'm shining the light. And then I have to figure out what connections I'm gonna use to actually power the ECU, or power the wideband, sorry, and set up the lights and where I'm gonna run the wires through here to get to the next side where the wideband is at. So it's probably gonna be somewhere underneath here. Just figured out that I can go between here and come follow the same wire that's coming down here and go through and get through here pretty easy. So that's what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna set this up, put the gauges in, and figure out how much wire that I need to add to these if I need to, and how everything's gonna be fished through that hole. Alright guys, so I got the wideband gauge, this main cord that goes to the O2 sensor, fished through. Just need to set up the other wires, probably do some soldering, and then I should have both of the gauges in. I'm still out here working, trying to get everything set up. Got most of the wires fished through. Fabricators in there welding up the O2 sensor bung to this stock exhaust, and I'm out here trying to wire these gauges up. So when I get them in and running, I will let you guys know. Got them fished through that same spot. Got most of the wires, just need to get the map sensor in also, figure out where I'm going to place that, and I should be able to start fitting stuff back up. Alright, hey there YouTube. Everything got here, just wanted to show you guys the progress on the project. Basically what I'm doing right now is I do not have too much time to go back and forth and tune the car, and I'm trying to set up the wideband sensor so I can start reading the air and fuel ratio, and I have to hook it up to the ECU so I can get the reading to the MegaSquirt. So pretty much what I did yesterday, I installed the intake air temp sensor. Accidentally drilled this hole a little bit too big, but I'm going to fix that today. I'm going to put a piece of aluminum on the other side and then tap it for the correct size thread, and then just screw in the sensor. I wanted to set it up like this, so all I have to do to switch between the stock ECU and the MegaSquirt is disconnect this connection, which goes to the air and fuel meter, and then connect it to this connector right here, which connects the GM map sensor, which is right here, and also the GM intake air temp sensor. So that's beneficial to me basically because I can have my car running and I can switch over to the MegaSquirt 3 Pro plug and play, and then learn how to tune. That way I don't have to sit and have no car, basically, because this is a daily car. Next thing I wanted to show you guys, if I can see it right now, is over here. Down there is where the O2 sensor is, and I'll get down there so I can show you guys. I had my fabricator weld a O2 sensor bung, a second one, onto the stock exhaust. Reason being is I wanted to find out what air and fuel ratio the car runs at now at certain settings. So say wide open throttle, cruising, stuff like that, because that will give me a general sense and a better idea of what to really look for in air to fuel ratios when I'm trying to tune the car. Another thing I actually didn't mention is this. I got some new rims, went with XXRs again. Keeping the tires that are on there for now. I got them with the rims. Gonna eventually upgrade, trying to see if I can maybe Toyo Tires get a sponsorship, or whoever wants to sponsor me. But here's underneath with the 3-inch exhaust all the way back to the turbo muffler. Can't see it on this side, but I'll come around and see if I can get a view of it. Alright. And so right over here, you can see that right here there's a O2 sensor sticking out because I just used the old one to block it off, and that is where the wideband will be set up. The stock O2 sensor is 4 inches in front of that right here, so that's how that's being set up. This piece is only here basically because I need to run the car stock. So again, a lot of these things are being done because I want to use my car daily. So for what I'm working on now is I'm trying to set back up the wideband and the boost gauge, so I just have them running. And since the wires are really short, I have to set both of them up at the same time. So I got most of the wires fished in. This is the wire that goes to the wideband, and then these two wires are for each gauge, so I can plug them into the computer and change some settings for the gauges. Underneath here, I'm deciding to mount the map sensor for the boost gauge somewhere up here. There's like a little spacing, so it seemed like the best place because they say not to keep it in anywhere near heat or RF devices, so like radio frequencies or even ignition devices, so, such as coils. So in here seems like the best option because A, it's easier. I don't have to actually go through the firewall with anything except a vacuum line, and then the fact that it's away from everything else will, or should, preserve the life of it. Another modification, quick release, very helpful because eventually I'm going to need to get the cluster redone. Also, when it comes down to trying to tune the car while it's idling, I don't have to adjust the seat. I can just pull off the steering wheel. Don't think I've showed you guys this yet, but down here, swapped out the gear stick for the gear stick on a BMW S3 or a Z3, sorry, and it's the 3.0 liter shifter. And basically what this does is it reduces the throw on the shifter, so it's a lot shorter. I'll do a video on that. And there's the MegaSquirt. Okay guys, I'm going to show you a quick startup on the MegaSquirt. Everything's still not squared away yet. Haven't really had much time to tune it, but I got the idle somewhat okay, so this is what it sounds like. Pretty good for the most part. Still have a bit of surging. That's just because the tune needs to be worked out. but it sounds pretty good for idle right now. Once I get the wideband and everything installed, then you should be able to see the AFRs and modify it so I can get a smoother idle. But it starts up, sounds pretty decent, so I'm happy. Alright guys, so basically what I have to do is pull this back out so I can get to all the wiring again. I have to pull this back down. So the last part that I really need to set up is fishing through the wire for the map sensor for the boost gauge. And after that, I do that, then I need to start setting up underneath and routing the wires for the O2 sensor, and I also need to solder some extra wire onto the gauge wire so I can get it powered on, and so that I can get the signal to the ECU for the errant fuel ratio. Because for closed loop idle and closed loop settings, you're going to need that signal so the computer or the MegaSquirt can make corrections based on the errant fuel ratio.
Alright. I don't pick this up yet, but
Yeah, so I had to tie everything up yesterday, but for the most part, it's set up. Innovative really messed up with this because they should have made these longer. I don't really know what they're expecting, but I bought some wire, so in a few moments I'm going to start soldering this up and adding some extra wire so I can fish it through, and then I can get power and all these other wires that I need to be connected.
No, I hide it. It's there. But the last time, I put it there, I didn't move it. And they come. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so for anyone doing install like that, I'm doing a pillar style install for gauges. For the E30, it's relatively simple. There's some spacing between here. You're gonna want to remove the weather strip, remove the old A pillar. This gauge pod that I actually bought was from Low Tech. Pretty nice because it's pretty much perfect fit almost. And they also pre-drill the holes and provide the hardware and the covering screws. This specific one is actually listed as the M3, but since the M3 and the E30 is the same body style, for the most part they line up pretty well. They sent a little extra tab over here, but I cut that off because, again, I didn't need it. So right now I have to go through these wires. Mainly going to be using the white one, that's for the headlights, black's for ground, yellow is for the analog output to the ECU, so the ECU gets the signal from the air and fuel meter, so it gets that reading. The brown wire is the second analog, and the red wire is for power. And that's for the wideband gauge. On the boost gauge, they have this connector, and this is for the map sensor. They have a ground for that. This over here, this is for the tack signal. The black wire is not used. Again, red for power, white for the headlight signal so you can dim the gauges, and then again black for ground. Pretty much that's that for the most part. This is the MTXL gauge that I'm using for the wideband, which is the built-in controller and gauge. So all you need is the O2 sensor. They send you the cable so that you can actually connect the gauge to the O2 sensor. So that's that. And then for the boost gauge, I also have the map sensor, which is going underneath the dash. I have to fish this end through up here and then send it to the gauges. And then lastly, what I'm gonna do, like I said before, is solder some extra wire in here. I bought some 18 gauge wire, and then I decided that I'm gonna solder one for each gauge, just so I give each gauge its separate thing, or separate wire, for all the wires that it needs. I'm gonna wrap this up to make it a little bit cleaner, and then I'm gonna fish those down through here, and then once I wrap them up and connect everything else, I can mount the gauge pillar back up. I won't have to touch it again, and then I can start working on getting this wire and the O2 sensor set up. Alright, so quickly again, just wanted to show you guys, this is the wire that I bought, just some 18 gauge wire from Advanced Auto Parts. Shouldn't really need much more. I'm gonna set these things up first. What I'm gonna do is find the correct length, which about this should be good for what I need, and then I'm gonna match the different color codes. Yes, I bought the exact same color codes because why not do it the right way? I'm gonna cut about this much wire for each one, wrap it with electrical tape, and then what I'm gonna do is I have a piece of filler rod for welding, and I'm gonna use that to fish it down through here, so I have all the wires coming down here and hanging down here. Once I have that, then I can start to go and connect up everything, which basically for the gauges, you're supposed to set it up on a relay, and you're supposed to find a really good ground, because those two things are very important for the gauges to function properly. Because sending them up on, say, something like the radio signal or the radio power wire or another power wire, you'll get bad readings, basically because the voltage drops, and they tell you in the instructions to set it up on a relay because the relay voltage doesn't drop and it won't affect your reading. So once I start getting that sorted out, I'm going to start back with me soldering up the wires, and I'll see you guys in a little bit.